very distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I am truly privileged and honored to be starting this meeting, which is a continuation of efforts by a collective of citizens to show a new light, point to a new direction, and bring hope to the Nigerian people. One of the phrases that I hear the most often, and remarkably, I had it just 3 or 4 minutes ago, sitting over there. Somebody said, Nigerians are tired. But can we afford to be tired? Well, the consequences of being tired are hard to imagine. And if we just take that as a reason not to be tired, then we'll get some fuel. When I talk about this quest for a new tribe in Nigeria, I am essentially motivated by many factors from history. First of all, I'm inspired by the possibilities that flow out of following even recent human history, to believe that you can play the phoenix, you can rise from the dung heap of ashes and fly. There are many, and I meet them every day, who say, look, for them, Nigerian story is over. You cannot revive Nigeria, it is not possible. I can even tell you that yesterday I had a privilege, a very unique privilege, because I'm working on a book that is trying to look at economic reform, because they are one after the other, and the role of the higher bureaucracy in this effort. I was given a very unique privilege of being yesterday night here in Abuja at the meeting of retired federal permanent secretaries, chaired by former head of service, with his deputy as another former head of service. We had probably more than 60 former permanent secretaries in the room, and many more online. And they gave me opportunity to speak to them about why I was doing the research I was doing and working on the book. I told a little story in my opening to them about Chief Jerome Udoji, and it goes back, in fact, became the title of his memoirs or biography, titled Under 3 Masters. His work as a civil servant in colonial administration, in civilian administration, and then under the military. And I spoke particularly about a subject very dear to my heart. This is keep talking about moving from consumption to production. Everybody's concerned about the naira, the exchange rate, what is happening there. And the only intelligent answer that anybody can give is that it's about production. Because we don't produce, we don't export, and I can only get weaker. The only thing that makes it not even fall completely on its face is that some oil gets sold. And the Nigerian elite is stealing more than half of that oil amongst themselves, power and out of power. And they even make that small, like a sustain it, hard to find. And so, at the beginning, very beginning, colonial Nigeria did not invest in industrial production in Nigeria. Nigeria was just where to take raw materials and take to Europe. And when self-government came to Nigeria in 1956-57, and Nigerians became ministers. They were anxious to now develop their country. First thing they did was turn to industrialization. And in trying to turn to industrialization, they did a couple of things. One, the marketing boards of the various regions, northern Nigeria, eastern region, western region, had built up savings, what reserves, what will be our foreign reserve today, in the accounts in London, as much as 90 million pounds. Pastor Kibo writes in his book on the public philosophy of administration in Nigeria. But between 1957 and October 1, 1960, they have drawn these reserves down to almost zero. And I usually use it to tease or start off MBA students. I ask them, what do you think happened to the money? The first reaction is, hi, they chop the money. It's of course not true. What happened was that they were anxious to jumpstart industrialization. And they moved with great passion. Jerome Udoji, in his book Under Three Masters, there's a photograph in that book of Chief Udoji and Michael Okpara, Dr. Okpara, Premier of Eastern Region, arriving in Amsterdam on their way to search for investors into the industrial estates. And what drove this whole industrial estate concept? Premier of Western Region made a move, started an industrial estate in a place we now call Ikeja. That's why if you drive down Obakran, you'll see that almost all the factories. I'm sorry, so I'll say that the Premier of Western Region, as part of the purpose of his coming to power, wanted to drive that industrialization. He set up an industrial estate, which is today's Ikeja industrial estate. You go down a background, you'll see that Odua Investments have a stake in many of those companies till today. And not to be outdone, the Premier of Eastern Region started two, Aba and Port Harcourt, the Trans-Abadi Industrial Layout. And the Sedona started Kakuri Industrial Estate in Kaduna. What is very interesting, one of the stories that I tell, and we also forget it, those of us who have written in the area of political economy often talk about how we missed it. We also have with import substitution industrialization, which Pastor Kibo again describes and talks about the book by Arthur Lewis. Arthur Lewis from the Caribbean, the first black man to win the Nobel Prize in Economics. Arthur Lewis's book on industrialization of the Gold Coast being what drove the adoption of import substitution industrialization strategy in most of Africa back then. We often miss the point that in the competition between Eastern region, Western region, and Northern region, when the Sedona started the Kaduna Industrial Estate and worked with the Hong Kong Chinese, and the first textile mill that was coming to Kaduna, which opened its doors for business in 1960, had exported in advance its first 6 months production to merchants in Manchester in the UK. So Nigeria's industrialization actually started as export-led industrialization. And Irene Song, a Chinese woman who works for McKinsey, who leads their team on China's growing influence in Africa, makes a point in a book he wrote a few years ago about Africa as the world's next great factory, that factory in Kaduna broke even in 1 month. But we completely forget that history. We don't even seem to realize that history in our own writings. And Irene Song makes a point in that book that what killed industrialization in Nigeria was trade policy. So the civil service, which was extraordinary in that early burst of the first leaders in the north, the west, and the east, were the ones who made this possible. And when I then said to the Committee of Permanent Sections, I hope they would take offense that I'm taking this privilege of a private meeting with them, public. What happened to that civil service? And they earlier made sense of very interesting things, but that you read in my book when it comes. And so we recognize that our country has missed the road. Let us be very clear, our country has missed the road. In trying to fix it, we have been going about it in so many wrong ways. This is why this meeting and this tribe is so important. As I said at the first meeting that we had here in Abuja a couple of weeks ago, the central interest of my adult life has been to find out what is responsible for human progress. Why have some societies made progress and some failed? What is the source of inequality? I've tried to pursue it from all kinds of angles. The Princeton economist, Angus Deaton, who wrote the book The Great Escape, Health, Wealth, and the Origins of Inequality. From the work of Jeff Sachs and others, what is the real source of geography? What is the source of inequality? Why do some people live miserably and some live in waste, in opulence? And a few things have been clear to me about why progress has taken place in some societies. One of them is that values shape human progress. And this is really the theme of a colloquium that took place at Harvard during the period that I was spending writing a book at the Harvard Business School. That colloquium was based on a thesis, if you will, from a former Harvard professor who became a politician, Daniel Patrick Moynihan. Professor Moynihan, who was, when I lived in grad school in the US, I mean, my channel was C-SPAN, watching Congress and all of that. And Moynihan, when he gets up to speak in the Senate, you will see his colleagues get pen and paper to start taking notes. Great thinker. And Moynihan, when asked what was the difference between a Democrat and a Republican, said famously that there are two truths that guide the way the world is seen, that American window. And that the central conservative truth, that Republicans are conservatives, is that it is not politics, but culture, values, that are responsible for how society makes progress. But the central liberal truth, and he was a liberal, he was a Democrat, is that politics can change a culture and save it from itself. But the bottom line is that it's our values. Progress comes from your values. Whereas conservatives in America will think of it as family values, is the work ethic. Those are the things that make for progress. True. Democrats more or less think the same thing, but they believe that you can engineer it. So Democrats believe in social engineering. And so as I've tried to look at the planet and look at all the efforts at progress and what has driven them, it's been clear in my mind that obviously the very critical thing that everybody talks about is the strength of your institutions. Historians, political scientists, sociologists, economists, growing consensus that central to human progress institutions. And the British historian Neil Ferguson makes a brilliant argument about the connection of culture to institutions. He says that institutions, that culture make institutions honest to themselves. A remarkably true statement. And so, as we look at how we can save Nigeria, as it becomes to me very, very clear as an individual, a person, that you are involved in complete self-deceit can have a system of lies and think that good will come out of it. It's not possible. It's impossible. Because values shape human progress. It's not what you say, it's what you do, it's who you are. Character matters. And by the way, the book that came out of that colloquium was titled Culture Matters. How values shape human progress was edited by Lawrence Harrison as well, B. Huntington Jr. But character matters. A school that was attended by a gentleman who's sitting somewhere there. Government secondary school where their motto was something like, work hard, play hard. When wealth is lost, nothing is lost. When health is lost, something is lost. When character is lost, all is lost. In Nigeria, character has been lost across the board. There has been what Jared Diamond calls a collapse of culture. No country that has a collapse of culture can make progress. It is not possible. You can deceive yourself as much as you like. You cannot make progress. And so many people are serious about trying to revive Nigeria. Those people must about their minds. How do we build a kind of moral reality? How do we rebuild our values? And how does culture help us build institutions? Nigerian politics has been concentrated on damaging our institutions. I don't know how many of you have any respect for INEC. So why does INEC organize elections if nobody, most successful Nigerians I know, nobody thinks anything of INEC? European Union has written its report. Americans have written their report. Nigerians have written their report. Clement Kwanko was supposed to join us as a point. All of them. Everybody indicts INEC. And a man who is supposed to be leading that INEC is still sitting there wanting to organize new elections. What do you think anybody will make of those elections? It's a legitimacy crisis. It does not make sense. So, we have Nigerian politics so heavily invested in destroying institutions. We have our values all over the place. And somehow, we don't expect that our young people will be getting on the very next plane they can find to leave the country. And then we do ridiculous things. And permit me, I have to really keep emphasizing, we do ridiculous things as so-called leaders. We know we have an economic crisis. We know that we are looking to borrow from here, from there, to patch things up. And we borrow, and we give to people who are supposed to serve us, to use to buy more cars imported from somewhere. When we elevate prestige, as we perceive it, to that level, it is a moral, the ultimate moral atrophy. These are moral Lilliputians who lead our country. When you can actually, in the face of people dying on the streets, say, let the poor breathe. They are a moral cripple. It is not possible, therefore, to expect progress in this kind of situation. Not possible. You can bring the finest economists in the world to speak English. They're going nowhere. My favorite description is all dressed up with nowhere to go. So how do we begin to deal with this problem? How do we begin to revitalize the value system of our country? I personally don't have any great, grand plan, but to say one person at a time must be able to reclaim the things that make people make progress. For people to own those, to say this is it. No, if you are like this, you cannot go into public office. No, if you are like that, you cannot do something like that. You shouldn't get away with this kind of thing. So this is what this whole process of trying to build a new tribe is about. The last time I I spoke here, I gave the example of the group, CBI, Convention on Business Integrity, when they started trying to get business to commit to living integrity. Thank you, Dr. Kolade is on the line, and he will get to listen to him. Bishop Eko, Sojia Pamba, and a group of them came to address this Chamber of Commerce. After speaking and saying, look, what a powerful, simple statement it will be. A businessman all came out, leading businessmen in the country, and say, I will not give, I will not take. That is referring to corruption. And the hall, big hall full of these businessmen, simply just looked at each other and wondered why somebody is mixing business with pleasure. And just Dr. Kolade, myself, and Surveyor, the late Surveyor Kukoi, only three of us from the army of business leaders that ran the biggest company in the country at the time, were willing to publicly say, I will not give, I will not take. Now, this then leads me to part of my thinking about our approach to this rebuilding of our country through a set of values that we all subscribe to. Subscribing here, and this is another important point to make. It's not about morality. Morality is very important, but it's about practical outcomes. The average businessman from an African country that is considered normal, his availability of, if you will, loan, trade finance, is much better than that of a Nigerian. Why? Give the example when I was in industry. In those days, before we built up the foreign exchange market, which they have now destroyed during the last 20 years. In those days, for us to order a CKD set from our parent company, run by their own people, Nigeria was so, untrustworthy that its instruction in Germany was that you don't even put into the planning process for production of components Nigeria's needs until you cite the confirmed LC. When you sign the confirmed LC, then you can tell the planning people, okay, in your next planning meeting, plan 20 CKD sets for Nigeria. Now, before you get to the confirmed LC, you would have visited 1,000 bankers 50 times. You would have locked up so much naira for so long. Then they have the accumulation of foreign exchange. Then they will put a confirmed LC for you. By the time they manufacture the thing and ship it, and you get it, and you produce the cars and sell, it's a 1 year cycle. Whereas if you were telling something like that in Ghana at that same time, they would simply give you standard international trade credit, 90 days. They will ship it into you. You may have received it and sold it before you have to even pay. So when you're holding of money that you have borrowed in Nigeria is 1 year before you pay back, and that of the Ghanaian is 0. What kind of competitive advantage do you think you have over the Ghanaian? And the reason, the simple reason that happens is because Nigeria does not body of trust at all. That's to tell you how values affect human progress. And I'm telling you a specific story. I've told you the story 1,000 times, a real story. So, gentleman, he came to me. I was actually speaking at the meeting of the Full Gospel Businessmen's Fellowship. And afterwards, he came to me to tell me his story. He had bought equipment sold by Guinness Nigeria Limited. At a point in time, the Nigerian government made a policy that we could not import malted barley anymore. So we had to grow whatever it is we were going to use to produce alcohol locally. So these companies began to import new equipment to use to process sorghum. Guinness Nigeria did the same thing. And after they had imported these things and we were trying all this new government changing policy. So Guinness was selling the equipment. And he wanted to do sorghum mills and wanted to buy the equipment then went to buy equipment from Guinness. He got a bank loan, bought the equipment, but there was a small part, very small part, that was broken. And so he wrote to the manufacturers in the UK to say, please, send me a pro forma invoice so I can open an LC and acquire and buy this equipment. I can start production. Then he got no reply. DHL the thing. 6 weeks later he did it again. A month later he did it again. He had done this like 3 or 4 times. He was paying interest on this equipment that was doing nothing. And he got so frustrated he jumped on the plane and went to England. And went to the company. When he got to the company, he said, look, I've come here to buy this piece of equipment. He said, yeah, sure, you can get it. He said, but I've been writing you to send me an invoice on this. He said, really? No, you couldn't have been writing us. And the person said, from where? He said, from Nigeria. I said, oh, Nigeria. We have a company policy here. We don't even open letters from Nigeria. Anything that is postmarked Nigeria, you just shred. That was that company's reaction to 419. So this man had bought this equipment, paid interest for nearly a year, just because people do 419 in Nigeria. It's to show you what values mean and how they affect business. He bought the equipment, came back and started this thing. But how could he possibly compete with somebody who could have gotten that invoice, paid, and have started doing business 9 months before that? So values matter. So anybody who does not think it is important for us to commit ourselves to trying to build a new tribe of people, of values, of patriots, it is not a moral thing, it is a profitable thing to do, let's put it that way. It is a developmental thing to do, it is a progress thing to do. And part of my thought about how we should do this, and I'll close with this, because the idea of our meeting here is to develop approaches that we can use to increase our tribe. Part of our thought goes to how we work in clusters. I have suggested that it is important and useful to put together a cluster on their frustration. One of them is Dr. Umar Lazu. Dr. Lazu is about 92 now. Still writing, still working. Dr. Lazu is joined us online. He will say some words to us at some point. His last book, volume This Thing. When I saw it, even I was afraid. Like, will I finish reading this one? We have Dr. Kolade, who has worked his talk for many years. And so we have that cluster of elites who can express to us their pain and their passion, what our country has been, and the things they think held us back from going where we should go. In the 50s and 60s, who worked with young politicians who were focused on developing their people. And as Yayale Ahmed said yesterday, because of the element of competition between the regions, we're able to accelerate growth in the various regions of Nigeria. He talked about Ali Akilu from northern Nigeria, Yerumodoji from eastern region, and Simeon Adebo from western region. How these cluster of senior civil servants work collaboratively with political actors who had a clear idea of where they wanted their country to go to. As one former head of service said to me, he says, today's civil servants don't even know why they come to work. Because first of all, the political parties have not told them why they are in power and what they are really trying to achieve, which you can then break down to what it means for the role of the PAMSEC and the level 8 officer. And everybody is then evaluated based on their contribution to achieving that goal. He said to me, even I am now looking forward to reading my book, because there's so much fun in what has come from the research. He said to me that, look, today, public service, because they're using the merit system, people just show up for work. There's no measure of performance. And you just hope that one day somebody from your religion or from your ethnic group is in a position to promote you. And you just become upset. That's what the public service has become. It's a head of service, recent head of service of a federation. So, how do we change all of this? How do we reinvent Nigeria so that our people can know progress? So if we get inspiration from the College of Seniors, like Dr. Kolades and Dr. Elazus, and we get the young people to be able to assimilate that a great Nigeria is possible, and that your worth, your self-worth, far exceeds your net worth. Because part of what has crippled Nigeria is the assumption that what matters is net worth, no matter how you get it, this collapse of economy. And people just go there, what you can get, grab, this pre-bend down culture. And it just shows how prophetic, how remarkably thinking my friend, an American political scientist, Richard Joseph was, when he wrote Pre-bend down politics in Nigeria. Such an incredibly apt description of what led to collapse in Nigeria, truly inaction. Then we hope that the transition, those are called the mea culpa generation. We who failed this country, my generation, many in my generation argued that the ones before them refused to move away, so we never really got a chance to do anything. My view is, it's a cop-out. My generation failed this country. My generation failed this country because we didn't stand up hard enough. Well, there were a few of us who were in their faces, who passed up on possibilities of owning those fancy cars and having private jets. 99% of the guys who have private jets are not half as smart as most of the people I know. But because their values allow them to do certain things, they're the ones that we now got young people looking up to as the ones who succeeded. No, we must begin to define what success really means. And we must be able to look down with contempt on the guy who has a private jet. If we cannot see how what gave him that private jet impacted the world. This is the moral revolution that must start in Nigeria. We live in the age of the aristocracy of talent, and the age in which who you are should never be defined by who you know. The content of your character, the capacity of your being. How we get people to do that depends a lot on the mea culpa of the transition agents, transition generation. Those of us who have in between them and these younger people. And we need a mass initiative of mea culpa. Those of us who say, look, we did wrong to our country. Because we did wrong to our country. I've told so many times, I was in Thailand last week. I was sitting on the beach in Pattaya and just thinking, and I was telling to those with me a story of one of my Thai classmates where both PhD candidates in the United States, 1979, 80. And I didn't see him for 20-something years until I ran into him at Charles de Gaulle. And the first thing he said, he didn't even realize he couldn't stop himself. Maybe he's also me. There's a COVID! What happened to Nigeria? You guys were the smartest in class. And so, as I go back and forth to those places, as I sit in fancy hotels in Thailand, and my classmates there were thinking, could we get as lucky as Nigeria? And today we're saying, we wish we could be like Thailand. There's so searching to be done. We need to be reflecting deeply. And this is the reason for our meeting. I'm speaking long to get you to get the essence of what is driving this whole thing. It's not another meeting. It is not to speak English grammar and be quoted. It is not, it is action. What can we do to save Nigeria? This nonsense is not taking us anywhere. What we have currently, not going to take us anywhere. I'm around the planet. Unfortunately for me, this weekend I'm off again. I will come back, and the week after that I'm off again. That's my cross. And they keep looking at me and say, this guy that is speaking this English, look at this country, it's a complete mess. So what shall we do that our country will not be this mess? I thank you for coming, and I hope together we can brainstorm and storm and ideas from you. I know that there's not much that will come from me. Can at least make this country be reclaimed.